Happy Saturday for most of you. For some of you, it might be happy Sunday. But either way, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Happy Wife School show. Excited to be here with you guys. As always, today we are talking about why your wife is so emotionally dysregulated. So that's where we're going today. If you can let me know that you can see me, hear me, everything's coming through okay, that's always very helpful to me. And I will check the chat here in just a moment. But first, just a couple reminders to get the show started. First, today, I want to thank you guys so much. I just, when I was logging into my YouTube studio to go live, I saw that we just cleared 190,000 subscribers. So thank you all so much for just being here and being an incredible audience, for sharing the videos. The videos get shared so much that bring new people in and think it's so exciting. We'll be at 200,000 in no time. So thank you all so much for the support of the channel and getting my message out there to those who need it. And then reminder that I have the Happy Wife School show, these long format episodes that I do on Saturdays. You can find them on Spotify or Apple. And if you are on Spotify or Apple, and even if you prefer to listen to this version of the live show here on YouTube, if you could give the show a rating or a review on Spotify or podcast, that would be very, very helpful, and I would appreciate it very much. So know to go check that out. And a reminder to go check out and look at my colleague Josie's YouTube channel. As Salty often says on these live shows, Josie rocks. And Josie's channel is Beyond Remission, and Josie helps people to heal and outgrow autoimmune disorders and to permanently heal. What she does and what she teaches is incredible. So if you or someone you know has an autoimmune disease like fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis or Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, you want to go look at Josie's channel and what she has to offer and her message. She helps people to heal, permanently heal from autoimmune diseases by working on the emotional state to get the immune system re-regulated. So please go check out Beyond Remission. She just cleared 1,000 subscribers this past week, so we're very excited, and she's excited and very happy for her growth on her channel. With all that being said, I'm going to check to make sure you guys can hear me and I wasn't talking into dead air. Thank you, Phil. Phil says loud and clear. Big thank you to Steve and Phil, our amazing moderators every Saturday, keeping the chat a great place to be. So please help them out and keep things on topic in the chat. If you don't like the message and are not a fan, that's okay. And of course, healthy debate and different opinions are welcome, but make Steve and Phil's jobs easy. And if you have hateful or mean things to say, keep it to yourself. If not, they will time you out or give you the boot in the chat. So yeah, let's keep things civil and make it a great supportive place to be there in the chat, and make it a little easier for Phil and Steve manning the chat there. So thank you guys so much for being here. Saw lots of familiar names pop up, and I love that. Yeah, like Luke says, we love our mods. They do such a great job every Saturday. So all right, guys, let's get started in our topic. So I am talking about today why your wife is so emotionally dysregulated. A reminder for the women and men listening, this channel is for women married to good men and good men married to women that are dealing with normal, everyday issues behind closed doors that you would expect your neighbors to see. It is not for abusive relationships, physically abusive relationships, extreme dysfunctional relationships. This is not the place for you, and my message isn't meant to support you. If that is what you are facing, you need to get support from a licensed, trained professional. So with that being said, I want to talk to good men today to help you understand why your wife is so emotionally dysregulated, because it's a really important topic to cover and revisit. And also to the women. So as a woman who is emotionally dysregulated and has to stay committed to myself and live in what I talk about, can't take responsibility to be in control of my emotional state, I want the women listening to know that we don't have to be a victim of our emotional state and how emotional we can be as women and are as women, that we can actually learn to be in control and use that as a path to feel really, really good about ourselves, that there is a much richer, deeper experience of us as women than being emotional. Because as women, we often live under the false impression that being emotional gives us our power, gives us our richness and vibrancy of life, and that life would be flat or boring, or we would be flatlined if we didn't have our emotional ways as women. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. And there's a much richer, deeper experience we can have of ourselves as women when we learn to be in control and to regulate our emotional state and to access the truth of who we are, which is not being emotional all the time. So that's some of what we're getting into today. And the reason that I want to talk about this is that I recently talked with a good man on a one-on-one session who asked me, why? Why is my wife so emotionally dysregulated? And I liked that phrase and term and thought, that's good. That's a good topic. I'm gonna talk about this. And what's interesting is that in my work with good men, I don't need to teach good men to emotionally regulate. I do not need to teach good men to emotionally regulate. However, it is what I always have to teach women, and it is the foundation of what we must learn as women to be happy, to have a healthy relationship with ourselves so that we can have a healthy relationship with our husbands. That the path and way to have a healthy relationship in marriage with a good man is for us as women to learn to emotionally regulate, because we are so emotionally dysregulated. And the problem and challenges is that we've been so brainwashed by society, by women, that men are the ones who are emotionally inept, emotionally unavailable, emotionally shut down, uncomfortable with their emotions. We're taught that men are brought up not to feel. In my experience and what I know is that this is a projection of how we experience ourselves as women, being emotionally inept, emotionally unavailable, shut down, and uncomfortable with our emotions. And this experience we have as men that we do project, but then can also come to fruition, is actually the result of men being emasculated by women. When good men are emotionally shut down, emotionally unavailable, withdrawn, depressed, distant, this isn't the nature of who they are. It's a result of the emasculation that has happened to good men in our society by women, and the stories and myths that we continue to perpetuate onto men in our society and culture. Because the truth is, good men are sensitive. They are attuned to their emotional state. They're capable of being in control of their emotions. They're pragmatic in their understanding and approach and reaction to life. It is the prodding, the emasculation, the gaslighting of good men that causes them to be emotionally dysregulated. So the solution for men having that experience isn't to teach men to regulate their emotions. It's helping to educate men to see the reality of how they give their power away to their wives, give their power away to women, to cause them to react in those ways. And when they understand that reality and what's happening, they can take their power back, and they are naturally self-regulated in their emotions. They can control that. Some of you might be thinking, because I thought about this too in preparing for this topic, you might be thinking, but Karen, there is an epidemic of depression and suicide amongst men. So how can they be naturally emotionally regulated? In my perspective and what I see and through the principles of what I teach, that the epidemic of depression in men and the high suicide rates of men are men being emasculated in our society. constantly being told in a myriad of ways that they are the problem in relationships with women in society, that just being a man is wrong in itself. And they internalize that they are the problem because men are not given the truth and the education to understand what's happening, and not given the education to learn to not give their power away to the emasculation and degradation that is naturally there in a relationship with a woman, and then perpetuated and enabled in our society by things like feminism and the Me Too movement. And then not to mention, which is a whole other subject on its own, how emasculation in men starts in their relationship with their mothers, and how emasculating mothers are to their sons. So it's important to know that a good man's natural state is to be emotionally centered and process life and have reasonable responses and approaches to life. Doesn't mean that he can't have a reaction here and there, but in general is naturally emotionally regulated. And for a good man to stay emotionally regulated, he must learn how he has unknowingly given his power away to women, to society, to make him wrong and bad as a man. So he knows the truth of who he is and no longer buys into the lies and stories men are told about who they are. So the truth is that as married women, and we're gonna stick to marriage now and moving forward with our topic today, the truth is, as married women, we are highly emotionally dysregulated. And we have what I like to talk about, very low emotional intelligence. And men know this in their wives. They know this very, very well in their wives. And as women, we feel entitled. We have to see and know we feel entitled to be emotionally dysregulated in our marriages because we're so unhappy in ourselves. And it's almost payback. Our emotional dysregulation and our moodiness and bitchiness is payback because we believe our husbands are to blame and the reason why we are so unhappy. And there's no solution in that for the women listening. When you feel entitled and you're blaming your husband for why you're so unhappy and then so emotionally dysregulated in the marriage, there's no solution because we've put the power and control outside of us, which is why emotional intelligence is a very important concept. And in its simplest form, there's a lot out there and a very expansive definition and education on emotional intelligence. But in its simplest form, which is how I work with it, is that emotional intelligence is the ability to self-regulate one's emotional state. So our low EQ as married women is that we are unable and unwilling to regulate our emotional state. That in fact, our emotional state is in control of us, which then spews out in our marriage and is the very mechanism of which we emasculate and gaslight and manipulate our husbands. And we operate in low EQ in our marriages. Whereas good men in a marriage naturally have high EQ, are able to self-regulate their emotional state. And what high emotional intelligence says, or EQ, is I am in control of my emotional state. And that's good men in a marriage. They're in control of their emotional state until they are pushed beyond the edge by their wives' own emotional dysregulation and low emotional intelligence, that they do withdraw or become emotionally unavailable or depressed or moody in the relationship. But what's fascinating is, as women, if we learn to emotionally regulate and show up as our best in the relationship and stop emasculating, stop gaslighting, stop manipulating our husbands with our emotions and making them wrong and bad, a good man will re-engage, and he's steady Eddie. I mean, that's the very nature of a good man, and is steady, predictable, stable, is because they're naturally emotionally regulated. And what we want to accept and understand, no matter the facade we wear or the charades we put on as women, or the theater, as I sometimes like to call it, is that on a spectrum, all women are emotionally dysregulated. And on one end of the spectrum, in our emotional dysregulation, we wear the facade of being zen-like and nothing phases us, and we can just compress our emotional state and just have a facade of always being at peace. That was me. That was me, especially as I've talked about before on my spiritual path. Thought I was very highly, highly enlightened, guys. And I did. I just carried this zen-like state with me everywhere, but on the inside was an emotional storm constantly. And I could wear that facade, or chose to wear that facade, out in the world, and then get home behind closed doors. That would come down. It's like my husband was like, "Who is this woman? This isn't the yoga teacher at the yoga class I go to with her." And that's one end of the spectrum of us being emotionally dysregulated. You can know a woman that just seems just even keeled zen-like, has an emotional storm going on the inside. And then on the other end of the spectrum are women who pride ourselves in being highly emotional, bitchy, moody, because we portray it and see it as a sign of strength and power, and it's how we control other people, because we know that we can get our husbands or other people to march in line when we are very emotional, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and leads to us being quite bitchy. And whichever woman has the highest bitch mode wins in the hierarchy to be in control and power of others, because everyone else is scared of her and how she makes them feel. So where I would like to go with this, and getting into why are we so emotionally dysregulated? Where does that come from? And looking at a different angle than it being what as women we weave as our victim stories, what good men naively buy into about their wives and other women. We want to look at a different direction, and that it has nothing to do with our childhood. It has nothing to do with our upbringing, has nothing to do with our parents or daddy issues or mommy issues or any of that. Because as long as it is something in our past or our circumstances or where we came from or our upbringing or our parents or our mother or our father, we cannot change it. We cannot change it. So we have to view our emotional dysregulation of, how am I the problem in this? So that then we can be in control to change it. Because as long as a woman, as long as we stay in our victim story of how this has happened to us, or that the story of this is just me as a woman, I'm a woman and I'm emotional. It's just how we're wired. It's just who we are. It's a cop-out. And it's a trap. And you will never get out of it. And you will make your life miserable. And you will make your husband's life miserable. You will make your kids' lives miserable. So you have to be willing to see there's a different cause of our emotional dysregulation that starts with us, which is empowering. Because if it's me, which is what I've had to learn in every aspect of my life, if I'm the problem, then I am empowered to be the solution, which means only holding the mirror up to myself and not looking back in my past. That's why therapy is such a trap and enables our victim stories and enables our emotional dysregulation. So we have to look somewhere else, which is what we're going to do in 3 ways to explain why women are so emotionally dysregulated. And speaking specifically in marriage, we're looking at 3 ways to explain why your wife is so emotionally dysregulated. And for the married women listening, just flip that into 3 ways to explain why I'm so emotionally dysregulated in my marriage. And what happens in our marriages, which I think is important to talk a little bit about here in our emotional dysregulation, is that we become really bitchy. And we can do that in what I call the nice bitch way, or just the outright bitch way. No facade in it at all. And women take pride in that. But that was something I didn't want to see about myself because of the facade I had, that I was so sweet and spiritually enlightened and had it together and could wear that facade easily. I had to recognize the intentions behind my actions. And then when I wasn't able to really keep that facade up in my marriage, that I was bitchy, because that's where our emotional dysregulation leads to. And when we're bitchy, we're short, we're cold, prickly, edgy, walled off, can have the silent or not so silent message to our husbands of don't touch me, bother me, or try to engage me in any way, leave me alone. And good men feel that. They feel that as our impenetrable wall. When we're bitchy, we're sharp, we're irritable, short-tempered, can throw daggers with our eyes and a quick glance. And this is what our husbands experience in marriage when we're emotionally dysregulated. And that's why, if you're a good man listening, that's why you're on eggshells, constantly wondering who's going to show up, who am I coming home to, who's going to walk through the door. Because in a split second, your wife can seem in a seemingly good mood and easygoing and nice. And in a split second, that switch goes off and bitch mode is in full operation. And we know that in ourselves as women, if we're willing to be honest, that we can turn that switch on so quickly. And then our husbands are thinking, what the hell did I do? What just happened? And the tables are turned on them. And what's fascinating, and this was my MO, is my husband can feel that. What we have to understand as women is our husbands feel it. You're not fooling them. You can sit there looking calm and maybe have some kind of a smile on your face, but when that bitch mode switch goes off, they feel it very quickly. And brave men will say, what just happened? Where'd you go? And oftentimes as women in our facade and not wanting to be forthcoming and take accountability, I'm fine. Nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Nothing changed. I'm fine. But men, no, it's not fine. So let's talk about why we go into bitch mode, why we're emotionally dysregulated. We're going into 3 ways of why. And the first way I want to talk about is that as women, we are pain avoiders. And this is a confusing one. This could be a confusing one. But number 1, we are pain avoiders. And the reason that I say this can be confusing, because it's like, wait, but as women, we're so emotional. So how can we be pain avoiders if we're so emotional? What happens is that as pain avoiders as women, and reminding you that men are problem solvers, but as pain avoiders, we are constantly compressing our emotional state to feel emotionally in control. So what that means for us as women is we are so controlling and keep such a tight grip on our lives because we want life to look like this, like a straight line. No bumps, no surprises, no curveballs, no unexpected. Because then we would actually have to feel and face the discomfort of ourselves and the discomfort of life and the adversity and challenges that come in life. So because we are constantly compressing our emotional state by avoiding the emotionally painful things in life, the challenges, the ups and downs, the curveballs, the unexpected, we live on the edge of emotional instability. It's like we're a kettle, and any bump in life causes us to blow. like a kettle because we've been avoiding our emotional pain and hiding and being emotional and avoiding life, again, that our emotional state is just constantly compressed. So sometimes I like to use a snow globe to teach in this, so I'm actually going to do that. So here's a snow globe. And imagine all the snow settled at the bottom is our compressed emotions as women, because we're avoiding just the natural challenges of life, the conflict of life, the things that are emotionally uncomfortable, constantly avoiding that and facing it and dealing with it and problem solving. That's not our nature and what we do. So life comes along and all of our compressed emotional state gets shaken up, causing us to be like that kettle that blows. And that's because we're pain avoiders. We don't run into life addressing and taking the challenges head on, which actually causes us to be very emotional. That as pain avoiders, we're very emotional. If we were to face life and embrace the challenges as opportunities to grow and learn, we would be able to emotionally self-regulate, and that snow globe would be clear. So that's one reason why, as women, we are so emotionally dysregulated, is actually because we're pain avoiders and conflict avoiders. I don't want to face anything that's going to disrupt the comfort zone of which I've created my life to be just so that we have such a tight grip on and such a tight control on. The second reason why, as women, and why your wives are so emotionally dysregulated, number two, we believe that being emotional is being in touch with our emotions and that we are actually feeling. I'm going to repeat that one. Number two, we believe being emotional is being in touch with our emotions and that we are actually feeling. So, contrary to what therapy teaches or what we say as women, being emotional is not being in touch with our emotions. It's actually the opposite. When we are emotional as women, which is how we live our lives, believing that's who we are and that's how we process our emotions, I've had to learn something very, very, very different. That being emotional is being out of touch with my emotions. And it is a result of that compressed emotional state. Being emotional is a way to hide from our emotions and what we are actually feeling. It's a way to be caught in the drama and chaos of our lives, so we stay on the surface and never dive deeper into what we're actually feeling. And what I had to learn is there is no feeling in being emotional. That was one of the first things that I was taught when I started to learn this path of taking responsibility and accountability and getting out of camp victim, is that when I would emote, whether that be, well, I'll talk about just one example. When I would emote through crying and having a deep cathartic cry, I had to realize there was no processing of my emotions in that at all. It was a way to actually hide and escape what I was really feeling so that I didn't have to go there because it seemed too painful. What I was taught and what I did in therapy was to cathartically cry as a way to release the trapped emotions in me from the pain and trauma of my past and upbringing, which actually just kept all of it alive. And there was no processing or healing in that. When we are emotional, it does just the opposite. It disconnects us from our emotional state and our ability to feel. They're two, feeling and being emotional are actually two very, very different things. And I never knew that. But once I realized it, I can see it. I can know when I'm being emotional, nothing gets resolved. The victim story still lives. As I've learned to actually slow down and feel, which doesn't involve cathartic crying. I might have a couple tears, but there's no crying in feeling, which was like a shocking discovery and experience to have. But I can know when I'm emotional, nothing gets solved. The victim story stays. When I actually truly feel, which is staying very slowed down and purposeful and feeling through a charge of an experience in life, there's no crying, there's no being emotional, and then it resolves and I'm actually neutral to the experience. And that was a fascinating experience to have. So that's part of why as women we stay so emotional, is we actually think that that's being in touch with our emotions and that we're actually feeling, and we're taught that and it's reinforced. And then we buy into the myth in our society that as women are the emotionally attuned and emotionally mature and emotionally in touch beings, and men are not. And it's actually not true. And men very naturally process emotions without needing to emote and be emotional. They actually process their feelings by being problem solvers and understanding life. It doesn't mean they don't feel the punch of life or the emotional charge of what happens. But in general, they go into problem solving mode, and through that can process the emotional pain through viewing life practically and pragmatically and problem solving and moving forward. So that's number 2. Number 3 of why as women, or why your wife is so emotionally dysregulated. Number 3, being emotionally dysregulated in our marriages is a power play. Being emotionally dysregulated in our marriages is a power play. So as I mentioned in the beginning and setting this up, the biggest symptom of our emotional dysregulation in marriage is our bitchiness as women. And that bitchiness is how we gain control of our husbands as good men and gain control of what they feel, what they think, how they experience themselves in the marriage. We are the ultimate puppet masters in our emotional dysregulation. And here's what we are thinking as women in the power play of being in full bitch mode, which is synonymous with our emotional dysregulation, and why men feel they are on eggshells all the time and become scared of their wives and intimidated by their wives, is because we use our bitch mode and emotional dysregulation as a power mode. And here's what we're thinking in that. We can always get you to march in place. We want you to serve our needs and fall in line. We are deceptive and cunning so that you are off center. We are determined to keep you in line and be in control of you. And in that, we are in control of your experience and how you feel. So it's a power play. And then I had to see these things in myself. And it's why it's so effective, sadly, so effective in a marriage between a woman and a good man when we use this as a power play there's such a pull and push, like a cat and mouse game in this. And the deceptive cunning side is that one moment we can be in total bitch mode, and then we flip that switch off and we're nice and seemingly fun again. Or laid back or easygoing, the switch goes off, and then a good man's like, oh, I guess everything's okay now. And good men have short memories when their wives flip like that and then are nice. So they forget she was just in bitch mode, and they fall for the nice facade. And then before they know it, there she flips the switch again. And in that process of push and pull, there's a weakening that happens to good men in that, which is how this is such a power play. So those are 3 ways why your wife is so emotionally dysregulated, and women are so emotionally dysregulated and ultimately go into bitch mode in our marriages. So I want to talk now a little bit about the solution, as I always do in the live shows. And I want to talk to women. And I want to talk about camp victim versus camp take responsibility. When we live in camp victim, that's where we are emotional. The reason for being emotional in camp victim is that we have placed our experience outside of us in the context of our marriage, in our husband's hands, and the circumstances of our life. So outside of marriage, just the circumstances of our life, or life in itself, our past, our upbringing, our parents. We live in camp victim, blaming others for our emotional experience, which effectively plants us in the experience of being emotional. Because remember, as I said before, there's no processing of our emotions and being emotional. We get stuck there, and it's because we have put the power and control outside of us. Feeling and processing our emotions so that we are not emotional happens in camp take responsibility. In order to feel and process our emotions so that we are not emotional, we have to take responsibility for our experience of our emotions and our reaction to life. It doesn't mean that things don't come up that elicit an emotional reaction in us. That's life. That's being human. That's normal. But in camp take responsibility, I recognize my emotional experience is my own, even in the face of a loss or something challenging or a curveball or the unexpected in life. When I take responsibility for my experience, that what I am feeling is me in response to life, but this is me. In that accountability and responsibility, I can actually process my emotions and not be emotional. As women, we get scared of that because we think if I'm not emotional, I won't feel like I'm alive. But what we have to actually what we actually have to see is that in being emotional, we are deadened inside. It's a false sense of being alive. It's a false sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. That when we live and can't take responsibility and can take responsibility for our emotions and our emotional experience and actually process through that, you experience you. And it is a deep expression and experience of aliveness because you're actually feeling. There is no feeling in being emotional. I know that can be hard to grasp, but I am here to tell you that there is no feeling in being emotional. So when you learn to be in control of your emotional state by taking responsibility for it and actually feeling through your emotional experiences as you, not what's happening to you, there is a richness and aliveness and connection to yourself that you can never experience in being emotional. And that can only happen and can't take responsibility. And that happens by learning to have a healthy relationship with ourselves. When you learn to move from camp victim to camp take responsibility, in that process, you learn to be in control of your emotional state and develop the learned skill of high emotional intelligence so that you can outgrow low emotional intelligence where your emotional state is in control of you. And that's what I teach women in my happiness program, which you can find the link below in the description if you would like to learn more about it and apply for a free consultation with me. The solution for men and what I want men to know is that the reality of your wife's emotional dysregulation is that it's a choice. Your wife's emotional dysregulation is a choice. The example I most like to use with this is the difference of a woman being at work on her monthly cycle versus being at home on her monthly cycle. That when we go to work and say we're feeling moody or more emotional hormonally on our monthly cycle, we have the ability and capability to be in control of that in our jobs and in the workplace, because we know if we're not, we would get fired. So we feel a sense of responsibility there to be in control, and we can make that choice. Yet we come home and feel entitled to not be in control of our emotional state. It's just what it is, and let it spew out. And that's a choice we are making. So don't be fooled that it's something you've done or are doing or not doing that your wife is so emotionally dysregulated. Don't be fooled that, oh, it's just because she's a woman. That's just how she is. That keeps you stuck and out of the reality of what's happening. So you have to understand her emotional dysregulation is her responsibility. There's nothing you can do to solve it or temper it. That it's something she must choose to want to gain control of and understand and have integrity and character to be in control of her emotional state at home, just as she does at work or at the grocery store with complete strangers or at church or with her friend group. If she can choose to be the nice, easygoing, emotionally in control woman in those arenas, she can choose to do it at home as well. She's choosing to have low EQ. She's choosing to be emotional because she blames you and feels entitled to not keep it together and not be in control at home. It's our lack of accountability and our lack of integrity as women in our marriages, and then gaslighting you to make you believe it's somehow your fault. It's a power play. So a good man's path forward to not be a victim to his wife's emotional dysregulation is to understand the reality and to stay firmly grounded in that reality, to see the truth of his wife as a woman and not get sucked into the power play and not get sucked into the games. That's how you regain your control so that your wife can no longer manipulate you with her emotional state. Thank you so much for joining me today. That's our topic. Where do I go next? If you haven't already, please like the video if it spoke to you. Share it with anyone you know that it could help. Consider subscribing. Let's get the channel to 200,000. We're going to be there in no time and excited for that. And thank you again so much for crossing 190,000 today. It's so exciting. I'm going to head over to the chat. Phil is going to send me some questions. Thank you so much, Phil. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. Happy Derby Day to those who enjoy the Derby. I haven't looked at the horses yet. Last year I got to spend Derby with my dad and watched all the races all day long with my dad, and it was really, really fun. He's really into it. He and my mom actually live in Jeffersonville, Indiana, which is just on the other side of Louisville where Churchill Downs is, and that was a great memory last year, getting to spend the Derby with my dad. So I might call him this afternoon, see what he's betting, and hear his excitement for the Derby, because it's something he really enjoys, and it's fun to share that with him. So I'll head over to the chat for a moment, and Phil's gonna send me some questions. I saw his last call for questions, guys. So just a reminder, I don't always answer every question. I don't always feel prepared on the spot for that. And I'm going to head over to my super chats. Thank you guys so much. Of course, you're a daddy's called Karen. Yeah, oh gosh, that's going to get me off on a tangent. I used to have a big victim story with my dad and blamed my dad for so much. He's a retired Master Chief and from the Navy, and I blamed him so much for my issues and challenges. And then I learned about victim and taking responsibility, and saw what a wonderful, awesome dad that I have. So I'm very blessed and feel very grateful to have the relationship with my dad that I have now, because it wasn't always that way. Oh my goodness, guys. Thank you so much for your contributions today. This is so nice. So I'm going to check these out here. All right. I like to read them first, guys, before I read them out. But KMS, thank you so much for such a generous contribution. That's very, very appreciated. Yeah. Okay. Good question. I have to ask sincerely, what are the upsides to having a wife nowadays? It just seems like chicks be tripping. I'm like that. And men are legally bound to provide tangibles, provide and protect, while women are nebulous and not legal bound. Great question. So I've done some videos on this that I would recommend that you go check out. There's a live video on it's an older one. It's an older one on like what's the purpose of marriage or why get married. It's definitely an older one, and I talk about this periodically, so you can find it in some other ones. I recently did a Q&A. I believe it was Where Did God Go in Marriage, where I talk a little bit about this, and there's another Q&A slipping my mind right now. If somebody else knows, please put the title of that in the chat for KMS. But here's my sales pitch for marriage, because I'm pro-marriage. Marriage is an incredible place for us as both women and men to grow and learn and evolve into the best versions of ourselves. And with that being said, marriage isn't for everyone, just like having a business isn't for everyone. Going to college isn't for everyone. And I believe that if it's not an experience you want of yourself in your life, that it's not a value or a priority or something that's important to you or something you feel drawn to, that it's not healthy in life to do things as a should of what we think we have to do, what we're expected to do, what we're supposed to do. It's got to be something we feel called to, that it's an important experience we have in life. And for many men, for many good men, marriage is an important value and something that they want to experience. They want to be a dad, and they see the best way to be a dad is in being married, or it's part of their faith in Christianity or other religions that they get married. So it's not constructive to tell men, run, don't get married. It's actually very destructive because if it's an experience somebody wants, you don't run away from it. You run into it to grow and learn. You also have to know the risk you are taking. which I have talked about that as well. I think there's a video I did on how to find a good woman under the live tab. You don't go into it blindly. You have to know you are taking a risk, but you go into it to grow and learn about yourself and strengthen yourself as a man, because in my experience and perspective and what I teach and see is there's no greater way for a man to build his strength than to use marriage and a relationship with a woman to expose his weaknesses and limitations that allow him to give his power and control away over to a woman. So there's an incredible amount of strength and character and integrity that is built in marriage, and you have to go into it wisely, and you want to be able to pick a woman who is on the low end spectrum of the woman ways that I talk about, which I give framework for that in that live episode on how to find a good woman. And I would encourage you to go see that. But I believe God gave us marriage as a way to grow and learn about ourselves as men and women, and that there are aspects and attributes and experiences of life and being human and being a human man or human woman that we can only learn through the context of marriage. Marriage is a context and a window into ourselves. And that's why I'm pro marriage. And like I said, it's not for everyone. I don't think you should go into marriage if it's not a value and something that's important to you in life. And you can't go into it of what am I going to get out of this for me? It's what am I going to get out of it in me by committing and growing and learning through the experience. And for men, you must know the risk you are taking and mitigate that risk, which I have talked about. So go check that episode out that I mentioned. Thank you so much for your contribution and asking the question. All right. Yeah. Great question, Mauricio, and thank you for your contribution. How much validity should we give borderline personality disorder, bipolar, and histrionic types? I have always felt that these labels are used as excuses to live in bitch mode. That's great. I don't understand that last part, but I agree. Man. So I don't get into the mental illnesses. So of course there are women and men who suffer from bipolar, BPD, and personality disorders. But from my experience and research, it's a very, very low number in our population, and that more so the symptoms we might see in women that we might say, oh, she must be bipolar, or she might have borderline personality disorder, to me are just being a woman. That, as I talk about, we have these woman ways on a spectrum, and that when we put a diagnosis around it, it does give us an excuse. It gives it a label. It gives it something that we can create a self-identity around and a victim story around. And then it's our excuse card. I was looking to see if I had something on my desk I could pull out. It's my excuse card that I can use. Personal note and story. I got myself diagnosed with bipolar and PTSD when I was 22. And I calculated and did that strategically, knowing what I needed to say to the therapist and how I needed to show up to get that diagnosis so that I could have an excuse card of why I was such a mess in my 20s. That's what I knew to do, and doing the best that I could. And actually, very funny story. I met my husband when I was 25. I think I was 25 when I met Adam, either 25 or 26. I'm 41 now for context. And I was on some medication for bipolar, and he was like, "You're not bipolar." He's like, "I was with a woman who was bipolar. You're not bipolar." And I wanted to impress him and win him over, of course, as I talk about, and I was like, oh, and went off the medication and realized I was never bipolar or never had PTSD, that I knew what to say and how to get those diagnoses so that I could have a victim story. So I believe that happens much more frequently than society might want to know. But interesting question. Thank you for it and giving me the chance to kind of talk off the cuff on that. Thank you so much, C. Irving. Karen provides a safe space for men who have been through it, and Karen is definitely moving in God's plan 100. I am. Thank you so much for acknowledging that, and everyone can learn from this topic today. I appreciate that very much. Phil, you're awesome. Thank you so much for your contribution, and always being there. Jojo, thanks so much for your contribution. Thanks to Adam for sharing your wisdom with us. And I will pass that along. Ooh, that's an interesting question. Thank you, Lando Ash. What's the difference between a flaw and a red flag? Really good one. Really good question. So that's a great question. Huh, you stumped me on that. You stumped me, but that's awesome. Let me do this really quick while I kind of think on that on the cuff. Man, you got me with that one. What's the difference? So we all have flaws and shortcomings. And the woman ways that I talk about on the channel are our flaws as women. And on a spectrum, we all have these flaws, whether we want to admit it or not. So being controlling, being emasculating, gaslighting, being manipulative, being emotionally dysregulated, as we talked about today, being rigid, having walls, living in camp victim and blaming men and blaming our husbands for our problems and challenges and our unhappiness. These are flaws that we have within ourselves as women that can also be red flags. It depends where we are on a spectrum as women in those flaws and our willingness or ability to look at them and heal from them and grow from them and turn those weaknesses into our strengths. So how those flaws in us as women and our women ways translate as red flags is a woman who's entrenched in camp victim and unwilling to look at herself and unwilling to take accountability and responsibility to change. And she wears her victim story on her sleeve and uses these flaws as excuses in life and excuses in her marriage or relationship to not have to change, and puts the blame outside of her as to why she is that way. And she will be completely unwilling to change. And there are very specific red flags in women on the spectrum of those women ways that good men need to be aware of. And I have a video on that in the live show that I actually referenced a little bit earlier. Goes into when these flaws become red flags. I just didn't put it in that language, which is really good. I like that. You might see that in a video coming up, Lando. So I would check that out, where I think I go into 10 red flags of women, where these flaws that we just have as women turn into really, really big red flags where good men should run and run fast if those are presenting. So, all right, Tony. Yes, last week I asked about waiting until marriage, and that I want a passionate, healthy, and intimately strong relationship. What do I do? Thank you so much for the reminder and the contribution. And it looks like, guys, these are probably the questions that I'm going to get to in the live today. And thank you, Anthony Slima, for your contribution. I appreciate that very much. I just saw that come in, so I hope I didn't miss any. If I did, I apologize, but I think that's it. And thank you, Tony, for the reminder on your question, which I do have copy and pasted. So we're going to get into that. And I'm going a little longer today. So those that need to head out, thank you so much for being here. And those that want to stick around, I invite you to stick around a little longer, and appreciate you being here on my Saturday. Just going to see something. And Phil did send me some questions, but the contributions are just awesome today. Thank you guys so much. That does go to Adam and I getting out and having a little fun. So I appreciate that so much. And Phil sent me some other really, really great comments that I don't think I'm going to get to, but I will read through them after the show. And I'll revisit any that I think might be good to look back at. All right, so this was the question from Tony last week. There's a girl who I want to marry. I haven't engaged with her sexually at all and don't plan to until marriage. I have a higher drive and I want to avoid a sexless marriage. What do I do? So thank you again, Tony, for the question. And I imagine it is a value, either a faith value or just a personal value to wait until marriage. So I'm not going to give an opinion on if I think that's a good idea or not, because that's a values-based decision. And as I often say, values are not right or wrong. They're what somebody prioritizes and what's important to them. So good for you. And knowing that that's your value and what's important to you is to wait until marriage. So what you want to know is that you're marrying a woman. And you want to assess ahead of marriage, where does the woman that you want to marry fall on the spectrum of the woman ways that I talk about? Because you are marrying a woman and she is going to have the issues and challenges that I talk about on the channel, because we all have these issues on a spectrum. So you want to assume, and not in a doomsday way, not in a making the woman you love wrong or bad way, but you want to assume that she has a facade in your dating relationship that you're in now to get you to get the ring and to get married, because that's what we do as women. And so you have to know there's going to be a level of bait and switch once you get married, and you are taking a risk. Waiting until marriage, and even that being your value, you're taking a risk that you don't know what you're going to be stepping into once you get married. But also, I believe even if you did have sex before marriage, you're still marrying a woman, and you're going to face the issues and challenges around sex that I talk about very often, that men share in the chat, talk about. You can expect she might be open to sex in the beginning, and at some point she's going to start to shut down in the bedroom. And that's part of our woman ways and what we do, because we never learn to enjoy sex for ourselves. So you have to be aware of the risk you are taking going into marriage. And again, not in a doomsday way, not in a pessimistic way, but to be able to deal with the reality and navigate it the best you can. You have to assume you're going to face these problems and challenges in marriage. So you have to do your homework ahead of time. Good for you to watch the channel and to be growing and learning, but you've got to do your work ahead of time to understand what you're walking into. You absolutely, I guess the live episode I'm recommending here in the questions today the most is you need to go watch How to Find a Good Woman and listen through the red flags, and then also put into place and practice what I outline is very, very important. The steps you take to mitigate the risk, because in taking those steps, it's going to show you the woman that you are marrying. And to know, you're not going to know until you get married where your wife and this woman falls on the spectrum of the issues around sex that I talk about. You have to assume she's going to fall in the spectrum somewhere, and to also have realistic expectations that, like you said, you have a high drive. You have to know you're marrying a woman, and in general, we do not have high drives. We pretend to have a high drive, but it's all out of control and manipulation. So you have to understand that you're marrying a woman and she's wired differently from you in that regard. And what you want to hope is you're marrying a woman who's willing to explore who she is sexually, to find out what she likes and doesn't like, and to know for you, sex is going to be number 1, 2, or 3 and what's most important to you in a marriage. And for her, it might not even be in her list of top 10. So you have to find the dance in that and not expect her to think and be like you in the bedroom as a man. She won't be, because she's a woman. So you have to have reasonable expectations in that area, and to know part of the risk you're taking is you're not going to know until you get married. So you have to ask yourself, are you willing to take that risk and learn and grow from it in the marriage, knowing that you guys are going to do this in the bedroom, and that's the reality. There's another video too, Tony, that I did. If you guys give me just a second, thanks for your patience. Whew. I've done a lot of talking. I need a little water here too. I think there's another video I did where I go into what a good man before marriage, the steps he needs to take. Also, waiting till marriage, I would have her watch the videos that I have on sex and marriage, and her reaction to those, Tony, are going to tell you everything. And if it's poor and reactive and defensive and she's not open to it, run. It's going to get really bad in marriage. So you use the videos as a screening tool to see if she's on the same page and is going to share the same values to have a dance and work together, not only in the bedroom and with sex, but in marriage and in general, and what I talk about on the channel, to see if she's open to watching these videos and you guys learning and growing from them together. That's going to tell you a lot. And thank you guys. There's another video I did on how good men can mitigate risk of marriage before getting married. And Tony, I have your email address because you submitted it when you submitted the question to me. Thank you for doing that. I did see that, so that I have your email address. So if I don't find it here in the next moment or two, then I will send it to you. I think it was in a Q&A somewhere where I talked about like the things a man needs to do before getting married. So I'll find that and I'll send that to you. I'm not seeing it right now. But you definitely want to watch How to Find a Good Woman. That's really, really important you watch. And then you might also watch together the Q&A I did on why sex becomes such a big problem in marriage. So I guess in thinking that through and talking with you in that and answering your question, you need to screen to see if your wife is open to the videos and watching and growing, learning with you, so that you guys can be on the same page of expectations and coming together to find that dance. And if she's offended or defensive or turned off by the videos, run. It will get really bad in marriage. So that's how I would answer that. Thank you guys so much for staying a little longer today. Oh, I hit the wrong thing. Let me come back over here for just a moment to the chat. And I hope that I can see I've got a little bit delay on my end with my video. I hope that wasn't, yeah. Should definitely get a prenup. Yes. Very important. Steven, nice to have you live. I just saw your comment that you catch my recordings, but it's fun to catch it live for a change. Yeah. What does that mean? Hold on. I have to look a word up. Yes. Does Karen a spouse? I thought that's what it meant, that do I support, but I had to look it up really quick. Does Karen espouse prenups? Yes, prenups are, have to, if you're getting married. So get a good lawyer, get a good prenup. They're not perfect, but they do work. Worked for, who is it? Kevin Costner recently had a really good prenup, and it worked when he recently got divorced. So get a good lawyer, get a good prenup. It's vital that a good man do that, and in marriage, and it will tell you everything. If she is offended and refuses to sign a prenup, run, because she just wants to be taken care of, and she just wants to take you to the cleaners for your money. Yeah, my video is glitching a bit. I hate that. Sorry, guys. All All right. Well, guys, I think I'm gonna head out. Luke, nice to have you. Salty Combat, good to have you. Johnny Good. Stevie O, Phil, thank you guys so much for all you do in the live. Troy, nice to see your name pop up there. Troy's been has been supporting the channel since the get-go. Appreciate you so much. And I think with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Like I said, I might call my dad, see what horses he's betting on today and how he's doing for the Derby, and then go spend some time with Adam. Thank you all so much for your contributions today. It's very, very, very appreciated. And I'll see you guys next week. All right. Bye.